Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth. It's opposite of mythology, which means science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie imagination. Today I have a very, very special guest. You all love him, and he is full of insightful references to current events, strategic events. He himself is a research scholar, and the more I say, just the word is his word spreads out a lot on the YouTube. He's a star there in the YouTube world. Let us welcome Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
Thanks for having me on.
Abhijit, most of the people will be shocked with the blue color that you're wearing today.
Yes, I know. It's quite shocking, isn't it? But
Yeah,
remember, this is just because of what I get at Uniqlo, not because of any political persuasion.
it looks good though. The gray black background and the blue looks great. So,
Yeah, I think blue is quite slimming, though I think red is even more slimming.
so when you talk about the red, the Chinese come to my mind, the big flag. And the US is going through severe inflationary pressures, the high gas prices, and it's getting worse day by day, and including the if you look at the thermal power plants who are all run on coal, most of them. Now, what is your view? Why this kind of shortage you see in the US today from your perspective?
So, look, um, if you keep spending money that you don't have, this is what's going to happen. I see a lot of, you know, climate change activism, which I support because I don't deny climate change, unlike a lot of Republicans. It's real. And my greatest worry is the amount of destruction it causes to developing countries, especially agricultural countries like India that depend on, you know, farming and therefore rain and things like that, much more vulnerable to it than developed countries. The problem is, are you willing to look at it holistically? So, for example, looking at your consumer patterns, your food and spending patterns, the pattern of your cities, which is car intensive, public transport weak, you know, way too expansive, way too destructive of forests, or having a city in the middle of the desert like Las Vegas that requires a huge siphoning off of water, you know, which essentially treats water not as a nutrient feeder for an ecosystem, but a resource to be exploited. There's lots of layers to this. Ultimately, it keeps coming down to this that a lot of the costs are going to keep going up because America's activism is not intersectional despite all their claims to do so. And it's fundamentally at requires a kind of lifestyle change that I don't think Americans are ready for. And the point is to kind of shove those changes down their throats ultimately. Uh, and that's my take on it.
Coming to the geostrategic framework, and the COP26 deliberations are still going on. Do you think it's the loss of American position or the changing of position, because the India with it has its own right to modify the COP26, and which they have successfully done it, because most of the Indian thermal power plants are also based on coal. What do you have to say on that?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So
Modified and
the
what?
American opposition, so the Indian diplomats made a change in the COP26 final declaration on slowly phasing out the coal, which because Indian economy is dependent on that.
Which incidentally everybody agreed with. Because see, India has two options. One is coal and one is nuclear power. I think nuclear power is going to be gone in a very big way by India, even though it's not been made public. But it is going to be gone in for, and the rest is going to come from solar and other renewable sources. Now, remember, there is an issue even with solar. How much? Because solar, a, a nuclear power plant would probably require somewhere between less than 1/10 of the footprint, not 1/10, much less than that, I think, uh, uh, of a nuclear plant to generate the same kind of energy, right? So where is all that space coming in from? Are you going to set up solar power plants in the entire Rajasthan desert? In which case, what happens to all the existent wildlife and things like that out there, which depend on a lot of sun, right? So there is issues to be done. If you put it up in other places, for example, you could put it up in urban settings, perfectly fine. But are you going to cover forests with it? What then happens to photosynthesis? How do the trees below get their this thing? So all of these remain to be seen how these problems are going to be sorted out. Because remember, there is no one final solution kind of thing. Each solution leads to a new set of problems, each of which then has to be tackled. And in India, the problem is scale. So things that work very well for certain countries would not work very well for us. So the energy mix has to include nuclear in it. So if India managed to change it, remember, America accepted it, right? So it's not an issue at all now.
Do you think America has no way option other than to court India? Because that's what people are accusing American government
America
to.
has a lot of options. See, India is not a quotable product. India's, there's this 1960s, those sword and slipper, what sword and sandal movies that used to come. It's the legend of Sinewe. It's a novel set in ancient Egypt, and it's like the female villain in that movie who pretty much takes everything away from this Egyptian doctor and leaves him with nothing. So India is a lot like that. It's all constantly, do you love me? Do you not? Etc. 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 And there's no delivery. So India is has for a very long time been a fundamentally unreliable partner, and it's just a question of when people realize that India promises too much and delivers virtually nothing.
No, no, that there is a growing impression in the world, including Russia, that India is getting too close to USA. And do you think that's the right sentiment even by Russians? Because Russians have started courting Pakistan nowadays.
No, because the Russians should know. I mean, who better than the Russians to tell you that we never did 90% of what they wanted us to do during the Cold War? So if they don't realize that, then it says a lot about the caliber of their diplomats more than anything else.
There is a new fighter program launched by Russia called 75, some P-75 or something, and
Yeah, it's a Sukhoi 75. Yeah.
Sukhoi 75. And the Sukhoi 75, do you think the Indian uh, Tejas development will be stopped because of Sukhoi 75 ever?
I don't think it will be stopped, but ultimately we will end up buying it for the very simple reason that whatever we develop is quite third rate at the moment. You've got the Tejas in when 40 years too late. This plane should have come out sometime in the 80s, maximum by the 90s. All the other planes that started development at the same time are at the end of their product cycle, right? So there's nothing much that you can do about it. You'll invariably have to, because it's going to get slaughtered like like clubbing baby seals. So you'll have to go in for a different fighter, which is in all likelihood going to be the Sukhoi 75.
Is it like already a mindset in Indian Air Force to buy that plane, or do you think they'll be
No, but
forced?
it's going to be. It's going to be because you can see, like, one of the things about project management is you see which projects have been invested in, what is going to fail, and therefore what is the most optimal outcome. And when you do that, you realize that, this is something it is almost inevitable for the Indian Air Force to go in for this now.
What about AMCA then?
Well, if you start it today, you'll get it 40 years down the line.
The first cutout is supposed to made to fly in 2023. That's what they say.
Sure. And when it doesn't fly in 2023, what do you think is going to happen? Tell me, why do you think India bought the Rafale? This was meant to be a MiG 21 replacement competition. and yet we bought it, didn't we? The LCA was meant to replace the MiG 21, and that entire competition got morphed into something else, and it became the Rafale purchase ultimately. So tell me, where are we thinking that somehow in all of this that we are going to be able to meet the deadlines for this program that we haven't been able to meet for any other program? The only people meeting their deadlines right now are the Navy. And that's because they've taken a very, very smart approach to what they buy.
You said in the last show also that how Indian Navy has been the very smartest user of indigenous technology, and also they're renovating the old technologies with the new flair. And another thing is the Indian Navy is made up of all engineers, and so there is a lot of brain power in the Indian Navy ships. uh, Coming back to one question, Chinese, they claim they have 744 ship navy. That's what they claim, and the Indians claim to be 258 or something. But India doesn't include the Indian Coast Guard. So how realistic is Chinese claim of number of ships?
Realistically, look, they can claim the number of ships. That's not important. It's the quality of the ships that's important. So a lot of their ships are good, but most of them they wouldn't last a few hours against the US Navy. They might fare better against the Indian Navy. That's a different matter. But the Coast Guard ships, Indian Coast Guard ships, are not suited to being in a full-fledged combat situation. They are essentially literal water ships. They're good for fighting pirates and things like that, but that's about it.
Yeah, Abhijit, I'm getting a lot of noise on your end. If you can come closer to the speaker, I think then I can hear you clearly.
Is this better?
Little better, but closer to the speaker.
Let me just try something else. Let me just try increasing the gain on my mic.
Yeah.
1 second. Is this better?
Much better, much better, much better. Okay.
Okay.
So, so in one of the things which was brought to my attention by one of my friends in the Indian Navy, US Navy, was saying that the Indian he was talking about the Indian nuclear missile program, and he said that India needs more nuclear attack submarines than ballistic missile submarines, because ballistic
Yes.
missile submarines are in the background, they don't come in the front, and India has to cover a long distance submerged in the Indian Ocean region. What is your view, and what should be the number of Indian such submarines according to you?
Look, we have had a program for almost 30, 40 years now to have a fleet of 24 submarines, which is actually a very good number. The problem is the government has done nothing towards that. They keep buying 6 submarines at a time in the hope some Indian indigenous submarine will come about. Obviously, that indigenous submarine does not come about, so there's nothing they can do about it. So this has been an ongoing saga for a very, very long time. Should they go in for a sea denial as opposed to a submarine based sea denial, as opposed to a sea dominance strategy, which is what aircraft carriers do? Yes. Why? Because we don't have the money to match up to China. So you have to be asymmetric in that sense and do asymmetric things. But again, who is doing the financial planning? Who is looking at ways and means and therefore creating something sustainable? Well, the answer is nobody.
So, two Indian nuclear submarines are in the water, INS Arighat and Arihant, and then two more are coming out.
So those are ballistic missile submarines. They're not attack submarines.
So what is the difference there, ballistic missile versus attack? What do you, according to you?
So ballistic missile does not attack. It just stays in water. Its only role is to launch a nuclear strike when it's called to do that. Right. So it has no need to attack except in, say, self-defense or something like that. This thing is a completely different ball game.
attack submarine. The nuclear attack submarine actually goes into enemy ports or very close to enemy ports. It collects intelligence, it collects data, it does a lot of torpedoing and shelling and destroying their ships and destroying their infrastructure assets, etc., etc., etc. So two completely different things.
So like ideally, you are saying that 24 should be the attack submarines in India, not the defense submarines, like the ballistic missiles here.
Essentially, yes.
So that means the ballistic missile force has to be separate and the attack force has to be separate to protect in
Well,
case of stress.
to be fair, they are separate at the moment. The problem is you want 24 nuclear attack submarines.
So the most of the Scorpion submarines which India got, they're very small ships, very very small, and they're
But they're very capable ships. See, 24 of those would be extremely potent in any situation. The Chinese won't want to be going up against those.
Yeah, generally it is always said that the diesel electric submarines are the quietest ones which India got.
Correct. They're much quieter than nuclear.
Much quieter than nuclear. One question about the recent Indian Tejas show in Dubai, and also there were reports that the Tejas flew near the Chinese border. And how true were those reports? And what do you make out of the Pakistani delegation visiting the Indian Tejas stall at the Dubai Air Show?
So look, it may have flown near the border. That's fine. I mean, anything can fly near the border. The real question will be can it fly inside their border? That I'm holding my breath for if and when that happens. But look, it's a answer that came too late. It would have suited us very well had we started introducing it in the late 80s or early 90s to replace the MiG-21. But that's that. With the Pakistani delegation coming to visit, every delegation should. India should be visiting the JF-17. Why? Because it's valuable intelligence gathering. If you're not doing it, there's something fundamentally wrong with you. So the Pakistan Air Force was being a completely professional Air Force and coming and visiting it. And Indians are, of course, being complete clowns in thinking that it's somehow an acknowledgement of superiority or whatever. It really is not, because all the Pakistanis are doing their job.
There were recent reports coming out about the Chinese being afraid of BrahMos, and they also wrote on the globaltimes.cn that how BrahMos deployment is bad for Indo-China relationships. What is your view on that?
Look, they're going to try to oppose every single Indian military piece of equipment that comes out. But being scared and things like that are completely different things. I think the Chinese have ways of countering it. I have personally not seen this fear or whatever you want to call it in China about the BrahMos. Would it be an inconvenience to them? Of course it would. Would it be natural for them to look out for every piece of equipment that India gets and call it destabilizing or call it a threat to global security and world peace or what have you? Yes, of course it is. They should be doing that, in fact. And that is something we should also be doing, which we never do, unfortunately, right? So, again, nothing that I'm seeing that they're doing wrong.
One important piece of information which really comes out is the India's deployment of various assets against China. But Indian diplomacy, the new diplomat which is being sent to China, which is very China specialist. So you don't need a China specialist for China, because we don't have to understand them. We have to understand their actions. So do you think that we ever understand the Chinese Communist Party specialist ever in China, or we send them?
No, we never do. I think this has been a big lacuna in the way we look at things. Because when we send our so-called scholars to China, they come back completely brainwashed. The ones that don't come off brainwashed, come off compromised? because the Chinese have fantastic ways of compromising you, from money to honey traps. And then there's the third set. And the third set, according to me, are the most dangerous, because what they do is they go to China, they don't understand squat. And, there's this famous line in Ayn Rand that what you don't understand, you think is profound. So they come, and because they didn't understand the Chinese and the Chinese managed to pull the wool over their eyes, they claim that everything the Chinese do is profound and part of a 10,000-year-old game plan.
So the Chinese Communist Party, one paper came out that by 2030 they want to take Taiwan. 2040 they want to resolve all the border disputes with India by capturing Arunachal Pradesh and most of the Ladakh, which they have already occupied, most border areas, I would say. And 2060 to combat with USA. Do you think the world is taking it seriously, or the world is preparing for it?
I don't think anybody is preparing for it. But look, let's also be clear about one thing. This Chinese boom story, it can't last that long. It's fundamentally been unsustainable thus far. So at some point, it's got to crack. At some point, the bad investments are going to lead to a run on their currency and things like that. There's only so much that you can do. Yeah, your $3 trillion in 3 plus, I think almost 4 trillion now in reserves helps you cover it up a long way, but it won't keep covering it up for you, right? So there's a lot of things out here that simply, well, let's put it this way. I would be particularly amused if I saw China lasting that long in its current strength.
The recent Xi Jinping has been appointed as the new president, and I think he'll be the new, and he's almost like Mao Zedong in many ways. And
he's actually much more powerful than Mao Zedong, but yeah.
And Mao Zedong was responsible for 1959 war with India, 1959 to 1962. So do you think more aggression India will face now, which has already been predicted by many American analysts?
Significantly more, because the more missteps he takes, the more things he gets wrong. He's already gotten a lot of things wrong, but the more things he gets wrong, the more the incentive for him to lead to external aggression.
And one more thing has happened is in China, the Evergrande has failed, and one more company went bust. There are two large busts, which is almost putting a hole almost to the tune of $1 trillion in the Chinese Communist Party pocket. Almost $1 trillion.
Yeah. But see, this is all a part of Xi Jinping's own mistakes. You can blame Evergrande for it, but he was in charge of seeing that nobody was buying all the flats that these people were peddling. Did any regulator in China pick up on the fact that there was a huge mismatch? And this, mind you, for the last 10 years, people have been constantly writing about this phenomenon in China, of China's ghost cities, where they put up these buildings and nobody buys them. Did they do anything at that point? No. And this is, India's greatest asset. Like a friend of mine used to keep saying, India's greatest weakness is Modi's ego. India's greatest asset is Xi Jinping's stupidity.
So do you think that the Turkey, which has been trying to play an ally of China and Pakistan, is Turkey important for China in terms of intervention in the Middle East and trying to take up American interests over there? Do you think they're doing that, or they?
No, look, Turkey's, whatever Turkey does now, Turkey isn't what it used to be once upon a time, right? Turkey could have been something else had Erdogan just focused on, the economy and things like that. He did the same. Think of Erdogan as Xi Jinping in a shorter span of time. Xi Jinping might get 20, 30 years. Erdogan has already revealed how much he mucked up things. He essentially created, what was the problem with the Turkish economy? It was all based on services like tourism and things and construction. Mind you, same construction as China, which, buildings don't produce money. And this is the problem with the Istanbul boom. Much of what you're seeing in China today is a slow motion of what has already happened in Turkey with the Turkish economy and with Istanbul. That's why the Turkish economy is going nowhere, to such an extent that he doesn't even want to listen to his own son-in-law. His son-in-law was sacked as finance minister. Firat, his son-in-law, was the finance minister. He then, wanted to change all the policies and everything. And he was forbidden from doing so, and he quit. And today, nobody even knows where he is anymore. I mean, he won't kill his own son-in-law, whatever, but the son-in-law is obviously out of favor to the extent that he's keeping an extremely low profile. So Turkey is essentially fast forward of what happens to China. Turkey has, are they going to continue to act like a big this thing in the Mediterranean? Of course they are. Are they going to succeed in doing a lot of what they want to do? Of course not.
One major question comes in this entire thing is the Russia, China, and Europe pipeline, gas pipeline, and also the Chinese plagiarization of even S-400, which they bought. They already plagiarized it. They're deploying it also. So, do you think this is going to break Russia-China relationship in the long-term perspective?
No, it absolutely can't, for one very simple reason, that Russia is stuck in a monopsony situation. Right, whatever leverage that the West had to take Russia away from China, they lost it. China is now the biggest and possibly the only buyer that Russia has for its gas, because the West is trying to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels and things like that. Will it get there? That's a different thing. I mean, they're investing in a lot of foolish crap, but wind energy being one of those particularly foolish things, where the cost equation simply doesn't work out. If you remember, there was this company called Suzlon in India,
Okay.
which was also into wind in a big way, and it collapsed because its entire game plan was subsidies. It never actually made a product. Its entire bottom line was government subsidies. So the Western Europe is also going in a certain direction. So Russia now only has China and more China, because nobody else really trusts Russia enough to buy anything from it. So what are they going to do? So Russia has no options on the table. Like they say, beggars can't be choosers.
Now, you mentioned about the $4 trillion reserve of China, $4 trillion. Do you think it is stored in American banks or they're stored in cash in Chinese banks?
No, they're stored in Chinese banks, which kind of makes them vulnerable. But I don't think they care that much, because they've invested it in all kinds of things. Remember, they're also not stupid. They invest it well in lots of things. So they've greased enough palms and bought enough people. It's the greased palms that are their redundancy and investment strategy.
So when you look at the long-term Indian defense planners' viewpoint, according to you, what is the best case situation as of today for India to ward off China and Pakistan and Taliban, and also to some extent Turkey?
Well, India can't really do much at the moment. Remember, because for all of their faults, we're not exactly a big player ourselves. We love to think of ourselves as this major league player and all of that. But in the end, look, what are we? We're a pre-industrial, non-modern state, which is extremely feudal in its outlook, where the state has no monopoly on violence, where it has no execution power, where everything is hemmed in by politics or by NGOs and things like that. What exactly do you think they're going to be able to do? Nothing. So India की तो बात ही छोड़ दो. To use that word, no, औकात नहीं है. You can explain औकात in English to our viewers.
Capacity.
Well, capacity is a very
Mild word.
Capacity doesn't. Aukat is lost in translation.
Yeah.
There's a certain connotation to aukat, which is kind of
Beyond means, you can say.
not even that doesn't capture aukat. Think of aukat this way. I'm going to draw a mental picture for you. Aukat is a fish and chips vendor on the street of London walking up to Queen Elizabeth, who's taking a walk with her security guards behind her and the Royal Cavalry parading colors in front of her, and telling the Queen, "Oi, bitch, I need to go take a piss, oi! Fry my chips for me, bitch." That's Aukat.
Since you
So, sorry for the British accent and the bad swearing, but that's sort of a mental picture of what Aukat is. Chutzpah. I think chutzpah would be chutzpah is kind of not exactly, but yeah, that's what Aukat is.
if you, with the same word Aukat, which you explained so vividly, so I will ask you, what is the Aukat of USA today under new administration right now?
Well, Aukat, okay, so the US would be a bit like Prince Charles or Camilla Parker Bowles doing this to the Queen. They can do it. I mean, I don't know if they'll survive it, but they can do it.
So do you think that it is America's the new administration? They have shown whatever they have shown, they can control China, or they can control the inflation in USA, which they are not able to do it. The gas prices in some parts of California are $7 last week, $7 to a gallon. So what is
And
your...
mind you, this is a state that talks about equity and equality and wants all of this, that has, like we discussed earlier this evening, a complete car-based economy, no public transport worth its name except, say, the trams of San Francisco. That one train that you wanted to build between Los Angeles and San Francisco, I think going right up to San Diego, you haven't been able to build squat about it. The cost of that is now, what, 150 billion or something like that, which doesn't make any sense. It'll take too long to recuperate costs and things like that. Tell me, at what point did Americans think that they were going to build a green economy? I hear a lot of this green, but there simply isn't enough green to sustain the American lifestyle at the moment.
No, they have printed green dollars, almost like $9 trillion they have printed already since 2019.
Yeah, well, that's another reason for inflation.
2019 they have published, and then everybody is getting a child credit right now. So
yeah.
So I was told that $1 trillion makes up, if you put a stack it on each other, it makes up a 60 kilometers high. If you stack it one by one, $1 trillion is that much, goes 60 kilometers up. So anyway, so now, if coming back to just one last question, I know you have to go. UK. Now, what is the, now in the same word, what is the Aukat of UK today?
Now, UK is what it's been for the last, since the 1956 Suez Crisis. The Aukat of the UK has been the same, which is, it has been the USS Invincible Aircraft Carrier UK, Unsinkable Aircraft Carrier UK. Okay, it's the USS UK, the Unsinkable Aircraft Carrier. That's it.
One question has come from the audience. Okay, it's a hypothetical question. What if India was a southern neighbor of USA? What would have happened between India and the USA in terms of relationships and everything else?
Well, we'd be better off if India were Mexico and Mexico were India. I'm sure instead of Mexican President Benito Juarez, it would have probably been Jawaharlal Nehru making that famous comment of Benito Juarez that India's curse is to be so far from God and so close to the United States.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. It's always a fun to speak with you. Any one statement, since you have 1 more minute or 2 more minutes, maybe, what would you summarize India's position in the world from your viewpoint today?
A parvenu, a yuppie, a wannabe.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhijit. And thank you for all the viewers. Do comment on YouTube and let us know your feedback. And I'll see you again next week with Abhijit Iyer. Namaste.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.